Welcome everyone back to the Future Proof podcast. My name is Alex. Today we're talking about one of the biggest challenges companies face right now, turning AI from a hype to something that actually works inside their business. So I'm joined by Abesh today. He's from ThatWorks.ai, ThatWorks.ai, a company focused on building practical AI solutions that automate workflows. So thank you, Abesh, for joining me today.
A pleasure to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. So why don't you go through really quickly and just kind of introduce yourself, introduce the company and kind of what you guys are all about.
Yeah, sure. Just a bit about me. I had a background in software engineering as well. When I realized that I need to do other things, I started my first company actually back in Scotland, focused on virtual reality and audio. That was shortly acquired by Meta. So I was a product manager at Meta, shipping quite a few things that you still see on the box of the Oculus headset. We built end-to-end infrastructure and technologies that are still a part of all of the major apps that you would use on a daily basis. But after about 10 years in VR, we wanted to do something else. My co-founder and I decided to kind of take a step back and look at the next set of problems that we wanted to solve, which is what landed us on ThatWorks.ai. And the inspiration of that was essentially looking at how much time that we as individuals spend just wasted in meetings and chat threads and things just to keep track of what we are working on, what we should be focused on. And the entire process is super manual. And we were like, there's got to be an easier way to do it. So that's essentially what the inspiration behind ThatWorks.ai does. And what ThatWorks essentially is, it's an operational intelligence platform that connects to the tools that you already have. It works like a chief of staff. So at any point of time, say if you as a lead of sales or if you are the VP of product, if you want to find out what your mail bottlenecks at work are, instead of having to chase down people and instead of having to go through 10,000 reviews and meetings, you can just ask ThatWorks and we'll be able to hoover in your information from your sales pipeline, your PRDs, your chats and everything else and put a very comprehensive story together of this is exactly what is happening across work. And this is exactly what you should be focused on. So that's essentially been our journey so far.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think you touched on a little bit. I asked you like this, like right before the podcast, kind of what is your not perfect client, but kind of who are the people that are going to benefit from this the most?
Yeah, we've played around with our ICPs quite a little bit. We are still quite iterative right now, but the most traction that we have seen falls mostly on the executive suite, so CEOs and founders, head of operations as well. These are the folks who are invested and currently spending hours and hours per week on putting processes together. That can be as manual as getting reports, creating reports, finding out what the team has been up to, kind of summarizing it and putting it together. So all of these manual processes and rituals that these people are involved in for something as simple as an engineering stand-up to something as big as a QBR with a client, for example, these are essentially the people that we target. So if you are a VP of sales, if you're a CEO or a founder who's looking to, I would say, fundamentally change how data is processed and looked at in your company, you are the one we will be talking to a lot.
Interesting. All right, cool. Now would it transfer down to maybe someone like me that doesn't have, a super large network, not a ton of employees, but I still want to kind of, hook up all the stuff inside my business and be able to kind of get processes and things, kind of figured out?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, anyone who is using any sort of SaaS or digital tooling to do the various streams of work. In your particular case, there's the lead generation point of view. There's all the communications that you're having with clients, for example. So instead of you having to do it manually on a Monday morning where like, okay, let me see who I'm meeting this week. Let me do a little bit of research on Abesh. ThatWorks will essentially be able to summarize that for you in an automated report. Like, hey, this is essentially what Abesh said, and this is what you should be talking about. So at the end of the day, what you're looking at is your information sources, which always end up being very noisy and disorganized. That's essentially you're a right fit. As the organization grows and as it scales, obviously these problems, get compounded.
Yeah. So, I mean, as you grow and scale, I mean, it's just going to be that much easier to implement things and kind of keep track of all that good stuff. So that's awesome.
Great. Yeah.
Well, let's kind of go back real quickly. So you talked about kind of why you got into it, what you did before. When you guys and your co-founder sat down to create the company, what problem were you trying to solve at the end of the day?
Yeah, I think we kind of went back to the drawing board on actually taking a look at what was annoying us the most. That is definitely a precursor to what we want to build. Both of us, we are very hands-on people. We have taken different roles in our life. Like for me, now I focus solely on sales and acquisition, but I have pushed C++ code myself. So we both kind of have an idea of the gamut of problems that people want to solve. One of the criteria that we had was that problem must be close to us. So both he and I, we have been in managerial positions. we just saw how much time it took to quite literally prepare for reviews and the amount of time we had to spend manually writing off updates for our managers and leads and for the teams as well, because ultimately transparency is very key to a successful working organization. And a lot of the times we see that the high level overviews present with the executives, but the people who are actually doing a lot of the work, they may not have the bigger picture. And that means there's an all hands and this and that and never really percolates. So this problem was very close to us because we saw that we were spending about 40 to 50% of our time on our calendars, quite literally catching up. And because I was a PM, I was having meetings from the sales to the engineering to the marketing to all the lead reviews and the peer PM reviews. Quite literally, I think for PMs themselves, I think 3 days a week, NEAT was quite literally preparing for or being in meetings. So this was a problem that we wanted to solve because there's no way that this should not be automated or at least augmented the way we do things.
Yeah, I think looking back to like the corporate world or whatever, meetings were just kind of like the most unproductive time suck of my day. It seems like we really never even got anything accomplished. And this was well before like Slack and I think Teams was around like, very on a small scale, but people didn't use it as they do now. So This would be monumental for my day back then. So
interestingly, we've actually seen with the proliferation of more and more SaaS tools like Slack and others, this thing has actually gone worse because now your information is all over the place. So you might be having some ticket updates or some report which is completely out of sync with the latest conversation you've had on Slack somewhere. Whereas with ThatWorks, it actually allows us to pull in your latest actual conversations with your plans and then kind of, build that cohesive picture together. So as we have been exposed to a tool which does everything, I think that problem has definitely been compounded, especially for teams who are not in person or might be working remotely or hybrid. That over communication thing definitely takes a backseat because people are lost in the noise.
So now, so we explained kind of what it does, but this would be a really good question for people to really understand on like a day-to-day basis. How can they leverage this tool? So you're making AI really practical inside the business flows. So what does it actually look like on a day-to-day with your client? How are they going to interact with it? What are they doing? What are they getting out of it?
Ways of using the product. One of the simplest way is actually a question that we ask when we are qualifying our customers is, what is that one weekly ritual that takes up a lot of your time, that is really critical to the business, but can be automated at the same time? And it usually ends up being, say, a sync review, either with leadership or with the team. So what that looks like in our product is once you log into our product, it's also very permission-aware product. So you connect to the tools using your authentication, and we use OAuth, so everything is proper, and then someone who's not supposed to see details does not see it. We're also SOC 2 audited, so all your data is safe. Once they log into the product, they can, let's say, create these reports as one of the items. What that might look like is, say, on a Thursday at 3 p.m., you have a pretty big meeting with a bunch of leads. ThatWorks at 3 p.m. can actually create a pre-read of all the work that has happened in the last week, that is being looked at this week, and then call out nuggets of information like this particular work is blocked, for example, or this particular customer has mentioned that they might churn because they haven't, either the deal is stalled in the pipeline or they have written something in an email that, your sales reps may have glossed over or may not have brought it up because they didn't think it would be important. ThatWorks can go in, collate all these data points, and then essentially say assign a risk factor. So all the synthesis is done before we even use, I would say, use LLMs for what they're used for, which is a natural language interface. We process all that data in a fully deterministic fashion, which means every single data point that you see inside ThatWorks can be audited and traced back to its source, and it is completely accurate. So imagine going into that meeting, but now every single member of that meeting is armed with a pre-read. So you can actually start the meeting and finish it, focus just on the items that need your attention, and in some cases, not even go to the meeting itself.
Efficiency and kind of making sure that time spent with those people is actually talking about important things.
That's right.
And then also maybe even skipping the meeting altogether, I think is huge. Yeah.
One of the other things that we've seen, even for this report, it's not just a static report, which means that, say, your CEO gets a Word document as this is what the team has been working on. Quite often, what would happen is there would again be a meeting as a follow-up to get some details about, like, hey, tell me more about this. The thing is, now you can actually have that conversation inside ThatWorks with your own team. So if you've figure out that something is critical, ThatWorks probably has the background information on why this is critical and what your next steps should be. So even with you as not having full context, can actually keep on querying. Again, this all depends on if the information is there in some place, because we are not going to make up stuff. Before you have that conversation with, say, a rep or with an engineer on what may have happened or how you can help to unblock them, because you've already filled up the context with ThatWorks, not just with a static report, but being able to drill down interactively into each aspect of the report itself.
Interesting. All right, cool. Yeah, that's awesome. So now going kind of a little bit more general area, obviously with your business included, but everyone else too. How do you really see kind of AI changing operations over the next couple of years?
Yeah, I think there are multiple ways that people have been experimenting already. I think the biggest impact that AI can definitely have is anything to do with volume as a whole. Stuff like we've been using AI to, number one, make tools really conversational, so people don't need to be massive experts in a particular interface to actually make full use of it. But secondly, they can also dictate the tools. One of the use cases that we've been using is, for example, to write newsletters, right? So newsletters like release notes from the product. Previously, the entire process would be you work with the engineering team. Somebody with the technical chops would need to understand what has been shipped and then format it into a right way and then put it on a platform that can be there for distribution. I think where AI comes in is anyone with the right access can actually do the same thing without having to learn those tools, and also without having to know which Jira board to look at, which tag to look at, et cetera, et cetera. So I think practically speaking, where we have seen AI, I would say beyond the generation, the generative AI side of things, which I think is very much discussed. I don't think it needs any further qualification. But on the business day-to-day side of things, there's so much data and there's so much untagged and unenriched and I would say disorganized data. This is where AI with the right context can actually help people get plugged into their own organization, their own systems. And that's what it is great at. Like, you give it a lot of sample stuff to work through, and it can with the right scaffolding in place.
No, absolutely. I think with all my testing and things that I've been doing with AI and all the initiatives or, use cases, data collection or data like kind of analyzation is like, it's by far its strong suit.
Absolutely.
It's perfect for it.
Yeah, you can. One of the things that we also do is for the sales and people who are doing pre-sales, for example, I've seen them often being blocked based on creating a sandbox environment for demos, for example. I've been using AI quite effectively to create dummy data for all the tools when I'm demoing to clients, because you don't always want to show them your personal live in production data. And that's something that's been great, because right now I can just go into Claude or whatever it is and simply just write out like, hey, generate the next set of data. And it creates all the relevant data sets for my HubSpot pipelines, for my Jira task boards, for my PRDs, and they all follow a format. So I can just keep repeating it. It took me a lot of time to set it up, but once it's set up, I spend maybe 5 to 10 minutes on a weekly basis generating this very well articulated data that can then be used as a test case itself for putting our platform through the paces.
That's awesome. Now, if we're looking at what would you tell a leader in a business or kind of like one of your ICPs, if they're going to adopt AI right now, what should they stop doing immediately with it?
Yeah, I think going at it backwards, the first thing that I would tell them is to say, shove AI down your product or your teams without understanding what it can be used for, because this is a formal thing that I've seen. There's no understanding of what the true benefits of an accelerated workflow could be like. And then there's often a lot more friction that kind of poisons the well. So I would really see, ask leaders to see as a culture, what do you want your company to be like? Where do you want transparency? Where do you want visibility? And where do you want acceleration? Once that understanding is in place, you can then look at the tool or the workflow processes or the experts, to be honest, who can implement that or train up the workforce. I think that's one thing that people also forget, that prompt writing, while it's in English, it might seem like it's the easiest thing to do versus coding, but it's not. You really need to be, you need to know what you're asking the systems of. So people have to be trained. And at the end of the day, you need to know what the output is going to be. So being able to attribute a metric to, here's what I think is a good successful pilot or a good successful implementation of a product would look like, that helps you to really go down that direction.
Absolutely. So now growing your business, kind of what you guys have been going through, what has been the hardest part about scaling ThatWorks.ai?
I think the hardest part definitely for us has been kind of learning. I mean, it might sound a little silly, but B2B sales in the age of AI. And there are 2 or 3 tenets to it. One is, for us, like our background has not traditionally been in B2B. This is a new thing that we've started doing. We understand the problems very well. We have solved for this in our work lives, personal lives. But B2B sales is a different art form altogether. Our previous company was very B2, I would say C, but prosumerish. It was in a very different entity, so learning how to do B2B sales is its own art form. But secondly, in the age of AI, every single person that we have spoken to, even if they have been very clued in on to the developments of AI, they have been using ChatGPT or something personally in their lives, very few people have a very solid understanding of what implementing AI could involve. So educating people on here are the risks, here are the advantages, here are some of the questions that you should be asking us and for us to ask you. I think that has been quite an eye-opener as well, because oftentimes when you, I would say, read people on LinkedIn and posts and stuff like that, it sounds like a lot of people have it all sorted. But when you really dig deep, you find out everybody has an aspiration to do good, but there's a pretty big gap in understanding the impact this groundbreaking technology can have. So you want to be thoughtful about it, not just because you're scared of it, because you want to make the maximum use of your dollars and your time.
Well, especially too, when you're trying to intertwine that inside of your sales call to get that point across, it's very difficult because you don't want to also you don't want to downgrade that person's knowledge or, kind of make them feel like they don't know what they're talking about.
Absolutely.
But you also want to know that hey, this is a huge advantage that you're not using it correctly or whatever. So,
exactly.
there's
or even being able to flag, say, maybe they have an assumption of how things may work. If you know that there is a risk to it, I think it's actually on you to educate them that, hey, this is great, you're doing it that way, just be aware of ABC, and then you are sorted. I think that just goes a long way as well.
For sure. But then because sales is it's hard because you have to know that person's personality. You have to kind of know and resonate with them. Everyone's going to be different. So it's not like every sales call is the same.
Like, do you think you know better than me? I'm like, maybe, I don't know, but I shouldn't let you know that.
Yeah, for sure. It's just kind of how you word it. I've been reading a lot of Alex Mysik's books, and it's kind of interesting on the frames and the reframes and the ways that those people do things. It's pretty interesting. All right, let's get to a couple fun questions. But what do you think is the biggest myth about AI in business right now that you wish it would disappear?
That it can solve all problems overnight.
Yeah, overnight, yeah, for sure.
Definitely. And the other thing also, it kind of goes close to something that I love. And I love the, I would say, opportunity. But this idea that you can wipe code all your problems away and anybody would be able to do it, it's myth. It's not supposed to exist that way, but it will. It's not something that I can fight. So it's about how do we tell people that you can wipe code a prototype and you can explain a PRD really well, but you also need to know what you're doing before things hit production. So I think there's this general attitude of using a language model as the super intelligence AGI already, especially for executives who are the buyer decisions, that if we adopt AI, our fundamental core problems of the way we run a company will go away. No, it's not. It's probably going to be compounded and exposed really fast at the same place.
For sure. Absolutely. All right. Well, cool. And then one more last question. What excites you about where ThatWorks.ai is going next, or what are your aspirations for the company?
Yeah, I think we are really excited in general. We are trying to solve a very hard, boring problem around processes in general. Every person that we speak to understands and faces this problem, but hasn't been able to do much about it because they think it is not possible to do. So the very fact it's a hard problem, it cannot just be prompted away, but you need to really understand which industry succeeds with what, who succeeds with what workflows. I think that keeps us on our toes. And I'm really, I would say, looking forward to the future where people stop talking about AI as the thing that will change their business. It just fades into the background. It just becomes a thing in your processes and your day-to-day without you having to think, twice about it.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, what is the best way someone's listening, a C-suite executive, or maybe even just someone that owns a business that wants to kind of adopt your software into their business? What's the easiest way to get in touch with you or, sales, stuff like that?
Yeah, you can just go to ThatWorks.ai. There's just a book a demo button, and that'll just basically book a meeting with me, and that'll be me understanding and learning about you, your processes, and essentially, I don't want to sell you ThatWorks for the sake of it. I want to understand if you're a fit and we are going to be a fit for you.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Abesh, for joining me today. It was a pleasure speaking with you.
Well, likewise. Thank you so much for inviting me here.
All right. Bye-bye.